Uber drivers, what's the deepest secrets you've overheard in your car? 1. Two girls talking about how they FK'd the same guy. Both agreed his dick was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. 2. Two middle-aged couples trying to agree to a foursome. Both agreed his dick was too big and he was hurting them by lasting too long. Both concluded he was gay. You just can't win, goddammit. I picked up this young overly affectionate couple that spent the entire trip making out in my backseat and telling each other that they loved each other. Cute. So I drop off the couple and head on my way to pick up my text fare. I hear a cell phone ring in my backseat. Realize it's my previous rides. And pick up the phone to let them know I have it and I'll come back to drop it off. Turns out it was the guy's wife phoning to check in on him while he was on a business trip. Uber passenger here. Had a driver tell me he was changing his name to Nilram. Because it was Merlin spelled backward and he was a wizard. Once I had an extremely drunk middle-aged couple fight for an entire 30-minute ride. They attempted to bring me into their fight many times. I just pretended like I was deaf and didn't answer when they tried to rope me into it. Just keep driving. Just keep driving. I know this is the opposite of what you asked because I'm a passenger, not a driver. I had an Iraqi driver tell me he was an engineer in Iraq before the first Gulf War and he developed a superior means of gilding furniture. Chandeliers etc, which you can imagine was hot in pre-war Husseinville. Well, Uday wanted to go into business with him, but, and this is a direct quote, first Uday wants to be your partner in business. Then he wants to be partner in your wife. Words to live by. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Don't let Uday catch you. Passenger here. Not driver. I live in Nick and I had to call the suicide hotline while coming home in an Uber from work because it was only place where I could be more or less alone. I am so thankful to the driver for being patient while I was crying and saying really FK'd up things. It was so obvious it was the last thing he wanted to deal with that night. My friend Ubers in my hometown. Picked up some really nice girls out on first Friday. They're talking about their plans for next autumn. Guy thinks he recognizes one of them. Turns out to be my younger sister and he tells me all about it. And that's how I found out my little sister was moving to Spain. Former Uber driver here. Picked a girl up, a sweet girl from a bar on a Wednesday night, absolutely hammered. About 10 PM. She got into my car. Apologized for being so drunk and politely asked if we could just drive around a little while. With the windows down. I was prepping for a cleaning fee. Trying to drive and pull a vomit bag out of the glove box. But no. She just did that airplane thing with one hand out the backseat window. She asked me if I had ever thought about dying. To which I replied, "Yeah, I guess so." That's when she told me that she had cancer. It was in her brain and it was too far gone to consider chemo. I remember my heart just pounding. She told me she was dying and she was going to be okay. Tonight she was celebrating with her work friends who threw her a going away party. She told them she was taking a position abroad. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. Jesus. F***ing Christ. I turned off my app and cried my ass all the way home. Picked up a girl mid-Saturday. She was a bit upset and a little teary and opened up to me. Turned out a business she had started was failing and she was in debt and had turned to stripping on the side to cover the bills. She said the pay was good but she kept getting really sick from all the booze she felt obliged to drink. Part of her job was making guys spend money at the bar. She hated it and felt trapped and kept asking me what I would do in her situation. I'm a guy. So kind of hard for me to answer. Tried to give her the best advice I could think of, like getting the tax office to withhold tax for a while. But couldn't help really. Only thing I could do was end the trip early. The one was a couple of off-duty cops who didn't want their friends to know they were using it. Uber is still in a legal grey area here. I picked up a guy from a gay bar and he was noticeably coming onto me. He then confessed that he was one of the founders of a very popular gaming company and offered me $2,000 to come up to his room. He also refused to leave my car unless I kissed his hand. Fun times. What did you do with the money? Took this 19-year-old kid and what I assumed was his GF back to her house on Pride weekend in SF. They made out the whole ride. When I dropped them off, only she got out. He said take me to Castro and 18th. I said really? And he said yeah. I only make out with girls when I'm rolling. Never a dull moment in San Francisco. It wasn't so much weird as it was random, but my first night driving for Uber Lyft I picked up a dude at 2:30 AM that was finishing up a pub crawl. The dude was dressed in a purple dinosaur onishi and was hammered. He got in and started telling me his entire life story and how he came out to his parents and moved across the country the next day. He wants to eat balls and some penis. I am not an Uber driver, but I have one that was told to me. This driver told me that he picked up his last fare for the day and it did not have a final destination. The dude gets in the car coked out of his mind yelling on the phone. The guy says drive to Vegas. Here. And the guy tosses $500 bucks at him. That is on top of the Uber fare, which apparently was surge pricing. So the guy drives him to Vegas. From Los Angeles takes about 4 hours. The whole time the guy is talking yelling on the phone to his mom. They get to Vegas and he drops the dude off at some mansion where his mom is outside waiting to yell at him. Apparently the guy forgot about giving him the cash because he tossed another few $100 at him. Got out of the car and split. I've heard this story before. But the dude was going to Bel Air to stay with his aunt and uncle. Not to see his mom in Vegas. Oh man. Something relevant to me and I'm late. I had someone get in my car. Told me he's in his late 20s and that he's having sex with a girl who just recently turned 18. I awkwardly told him that's good for him and he proceeded to tell me that it's not. That his life sucks and everything he does to make himself happy doesn't work. He told me he watches vids of people committing suicide and wishes he had the courage they did to go through with it. He told me he's going to go to San Francisco and spend every last penny he has on vacation and just jump off the Golden Gate Bridge when he's done. I didn't really know what to say. When I dropped him off I told him that I hope things start looking up and he just said they won't. They never do and left. He also asked weird questions like if I hit you would you kick my ass? When I said I'd rather no one hit anyone he said dude. You'll whoop my ass, I'm a f***ing piece of shitty. 2 40-something guys who I picked up from a bar were talking on a phone speaker, and they were trying to make plans with a third guy who was at a party with a bunch of drunk 12th graders. Exact words. One guy in my car asked if there was anyone younger there. Other dude said dude really? Followed by silence. Then he said f***ing sweet. Not sure as there was missing context, but it sounded like there was younger teenagers there already drunk and these older dudes were going to pick up. Dude. Isn't that some see something? Say something reporting to some authority worthy shitty? 2 dudes discussing how much fun they had at one of theirs bachelor party. You should look up Taxicab Confessionals, it's a whole show about this from the 90s. And it's amazing. Also, someone should totally reboot this into Uber Confessionals. Picked up 2 dudes. They were talking about how they were going to keep hiding their relationships from their wives and children. Pretty messed up stuff. Picked up a drunk guy on street. Patrick's Day. He was talking about his boyfriend. And asked me if he should break up with him for being a money grubbing whre. He then proceeded to tell me about the 2 dudes he was going to cheat on his boyfriend with that night. Just a weird set of conversations. Lyft driver here. Had a guy talk about going down on a stripper while I was taking him and his buddies to a strip club. Not quite the question. But I feel very sorry for the Uber driver who had to drive my drunk ass home while my ex railed into me for changing the karaoke song he was going to sing. I was crying and he was screaming while subtle jazz played through the speakers. I had an in-depth conversation about first times in the drive-thru at Jack in the Box with a girl who just lost her virginity in a one-night stand with a dude she had the hots on. I turned off the meter and added her on Snapchat. He became mega bros immediately. Drove for Lyft in Denver. CO, between jobs this summer. My third PAX ever. And he was going to the airport. He said he was moving to Florida to get away from it all, but didn't have any luggage. Not even a carry-on. I wasn't going to say anything about it, but my curiosity got the best of me. So, where's all your luggage? Did you ship everything ahead of time? Asterisk. He doesn't say anything right away. And just as I was deciding that perhaps I wasn't going to get an answer. Nah. I just had my friend call me a lift and he set up my flight. I just escaped from prison but we look so much alike. His ID will work for me to travel. Asterisk. I was quiet the rest of the trip. I drove a lot of college-age girls that were looking for had a sugar daddy. They wanted 30-year-old men, no children. Good job. Willing to buy them lots of things, pay rent, bills. I had no idea this was so popular. But practically every girl that age that opened her mouth about a guy in my car went on about his age, job, and money. One girl even admitted to f-king someone with the same name and of the same age as her dad. My husband had a couple that broke up in the backseat of his car while driving for Uber. The woman made fun of her boyfriend's ex and was talking about how she had bad teeth. The boyfriend said her teeth were fine and that she was being really judgy. She then asked him if he was still in love with his ex. He thought for a moment, said yes, and she started crying. There was some kind of confusion about where to get dropped off since she just wanted to go home and he wanted to go somewhere the opposite direction. Super awkward for my husband. My dad was a taxi driver for around a year. He once picked up this woman with 2 children. The woman put both kids in the car and ran back in to grab her pushchair. My dad drives off thinking that she was in the car and starts to talk to her. He then realized OFCK she's not in the car. He drives back and it turns out she was on the phone to the police saying a man drove off with my kids. He got back and she was fine and they laughed about it after. Just the other night a girl climbed in the backseat with her bag on the way to the airport. She was on the phone with her boyfriend and they were having a bit of a tiff. Apparently she was about to board a one-way plane to go move in with him. Ended up driving her back home after going all the way there. Her in tears. As they had apparently decided maybe living together wasn't such a good idea. Trouble ISIS forgot to turn the stereo back on and couldn't just turn on music in the middle of her phone conversation, so I tried my best to listen to the air conditioning fan in silence both there and back. Made myself a cool $26. I picked up this one guy who told me all about his anal warts. Apparently, they were simply huge. Sounds like a pain in the ass. Quite the opposite, but just tried Uber for the first time 2 nights ago. We asked the lady what the craziest tea that's ever happened to her was. She was pretty. She proceeds to tells us a dude grabbed her favd and tried to force her to kiss him. Luckily she has some sort of brass knuckle thing and it put a hole in his cheek. Jesus FCK, that gave me such a justice erection. I've asked this question countless times to Uber drivers. Usually I don't get anything that's worth remembering since it's normal stories about drunk people. But here's one that stands out. Uber driver says he picks up 3 Brazilians. 2 girls and a guy. He said all 3 were attractive. One of the girls and the guy start making out. Not that unusual per the other stories here, but the story takes a turn when the other girl in the car, the one not sucking face, tells the driver that the couple making out are twins. Brother and sister. She said they do that when they get drunk together. He said it was the purest form of narcissism he's ever witnessed. How many gay dudes and drug dealers can fit into your sedan? I picked someone up here in Memphis and took them to a shady apartment. They came out smelling like some really good kush. I asked them to go back in and get me some. Got paid. Got weed. And got a new dealer out of it. I haven't really heard anything too juicy. But so far my favorite was this one. I picked up 2 guys in downtown LA. From their conversation I gather they'd just met at the bar I picked them up from and were going home to hook up. One was younger and clean cut. The other was older and rather scruffy. So I'm driving up Main Street to the 101 and the scruffy guy starts talking about how he used to live there in the 90s and it was a whole lot scummier back then. He mentions he used to have an older boyfriend back then. The boyfriend would call the scruffy guy and tell him to walk down to the sidewalk in a tied off shirt and Daisy Dukes. Then the boyfriend would drive up in his car and the scruffy guy would lean in his window and the boyfriend would ask him how much. And the scruffy guy would get in and they'd roleplay that he was a prostitute and the boyfriend was his John. The clean cut guy kinda glossed over this and moved the conversation along. But I thought to myself that scenario sounds hot as hell. I picked up a young girl in town to sleep with her sugar daddy via a website for older men and younger women. She said she makes $10K a weekend doing it. Picked up a guy last night that confided in me that he was afraid people of lesser races were going to steal all his tea. The rest of his family who were in the car promptly told him to shut up and apologized for his behavior. I had a guy tell me how his brother died and it was ultimately his fault but everyone thought it was an accident. He moved from Russia to the US and doesn't talk to any of his family anymore. Edit. He was a teenager and thought a pistol was unloaded but it wasn't. He made it look like his brother shot himself. At least that's what he told me. Some guy came close to crying when he explained to me he went from making a lot of money to taking a crappier job. I dropped him off at a house he now has a roommate with. And he takes a significant pay cut in his new job and talks about how his friends make more money than him. I also picked him up at a strip club. I talked to him about his background a bit more after we got to his place. Staying in the car. He tipped me well too. It made me sad. Drove Bill Gates on the Lyft platform. He has an iPhone. I thought the prompt read, scuba divers. What's the deepest secret you've uncovered? And I'm slightly disappointed this is not what I came into. Uber passenger here. Had an Uber driver that lived close to my house pick me up and take me to a repair shop for my vehicle down the street. After about a minute in the car, I ask the driver if he has any fun holiday plans. He says he doesn't celebrate holidays and that he's a true Christian. Perplexed, I asked what that meant and he told me he was a Jehovah's Witness. Things got awkwardly silent for a moment. Then he says, "How come you never answer your door when we knock?" D. There was one time I got an Uber request from right around the corner from where I was. About 7 AM when it came in. I pulled up to this apartment complex and waited about 10 minutes. I didn't know the rules on waiting. I decided to call after this and got a man who was very clearly drunk. We spoke every 5 minutes for the next 25 minutes because he didn't understand that I was already there. Eventually this girl in a short dress carrying her heels came out and thanked me profusely for saving her. Apparently the dude was trying to keep her there and was taking her phone every time I called. She had regretted going home with him and was trying to get out of there all night. The founder of one of the biggest tech companies in the world is gay, or bi, and not out. How do I know? I dropped him and his boyfriend off at a gay club 2 years ago. Edit. I won't be outing him though. He probably is out but doesn't advertise it.